Welcome back into the Dead Arm Sports Podcast, coming at you on a Wednesday live on YouTube. For those of you following along, if you are not, make sure you go and subscribe to our YouTube page. Click the bell, that way you know when our live episodes drop. Have a awesome episode. Going to continue in our draft preview with the most important position in the NFL, the quarterback position. Going to run you through all of the top picks that will be getting drafted in a week from today when you're listening to this.
I'd say most important position in all of sports, at least, as far as I can tell,
Yeah.
I mean, outside of the Nick Foles, his little run, any title winner, you're going to have an elite quarterback. So,
yep. So we'll run through that. I have a quarterback extension news from one of the NFL quarterbacks. Shocker, Jalen Hurts. So we'll go through that, what that means for the next stage of quarterbacks that will be coming through looking for extensions. RBC Heritage recap. And since we're a day late with the recording, also going to throw in the Zurich. So jam-packed episode. And without further ado, Joe, have our question of the day to kick it off. This one's just kind of a fun one. So endurance is not a factor in this one. So you have unlimited endurance. I want to know, would you rather be able to run 100 miles per hour or fly 10 miles per hour?
I guess probably run 100 miles an hour. I mean, it'd be, if endurance isn't a factor, that'd be the best way to see the whole country,
right?
like instead of buying yourself an RV, you just go, run wherever you want as fast as you want, and save some money on gas. I guess if you can fly, you wouldn't have to pay for gas either. But it'd be cool to run 100 miles an hour. I'd rather do that than fly 10. You would be the slowest person or the slowest flyer in the world, or you could be the fastest runner in the world. I'm going to go running, especially for, if you want to see the country. That'd be the best. That'd be the fastest way to do road trips.
Right. Bet your Forrest Gump wishes he could have ran 100 miles an hour when he was going coast to coast.
See, I was thinking Forrest Gump there too, but I feel like what he liked about that was that it took forever because he didn't know what else to do.
True.
He just felt like running. He wasn't trying to go anywhere. He just felt like running. So,
right. I think I'm on the same page with you with the running. I didn't know if maybe it kind of depends too where you live. Like I wasn't sure if maybe the flying aspect for you would be pretty sweet because you can get a ton of places being right in the Dallas metro area in a 10-mile radius. So you have a decent amount of access to that. It's going to take you a little bit longer, but I'm also wondering too, like if you run 100 miles an hour, if you're like in town, that doesn't mean you're constantly running 100. You'd be like just entering intersections, just without any
true.
regard to anything.
That's true. It would be nice to be able to just get like, if I'm going to Top Golf, like just, be able to fly directly down onto that second story, skip the, right. Just drop myself off like a bird.
Right. We could be found.
And it'd be nice to be, I could in theory then just like leave my balcony door unlocked or something. So my in and out, I could just, fly up to the third story, onto the balcony to get in rather than having to going through the building. Not that that's a major inconvenience, but be pretty nice.
Right. We can be found at Dead Arm Sports, Twitter, Instagram. Check us out on Facebook at Dead Arm Sports. As I mentioned at the top of the episode, go to our YouTube page, subscribe there, click the bell. That way you know when our live episodes drop.
You'll see yours truly here rocking a Dallas Stars in honor of their 3-2 double overtime loss the other night.
Nice.
But they do play tonight live on a Wednesday. So pretty jam-packed sports weekend or sports night. Bucks play tonight live on a Wednesday and the Stars. So and we're recording. So I guess I'm not watching anything tonight.
Right. Speaking of socials, at Dead Arm Sports, Gel can be found at DasGel. That's at DASJEL. I can be found at DasJPEC. That's at DASJPEC. Give us both a follow. Ask us any questions there. And make sure you subscribe to the podcast on your favorite listening platform. Send us a screenshot of your written review about our podcast, and we'll swag you up with some Dead Arm Sports goodies. Jalen Hurts, next quarterback up, set the record for payday, I guess. 5 years, $255 million extension, 179.3 of that guaranteed, which there are other incentives that are built into this, so could be worth more money as well. But I guess initial takeaways from this contract, I mean, he has been on just kind of an exponential climb since he came into the league. I mean, sitting behind who was it? Drawing a blank for his first part of his first year.
Wentz in a lifetime.
Wentz, yep, Carson Wentz, and then
Pennsylvania
ended up switching over, and ever since then, just awesome. I mean, has been phenomenal with passing the ball, which is something that weren't really sure. He knew he had the athletic ability to run and everything, but his arm has definitely improved since he's come into the league. And Philly's got their guy long term.
And he's almost the opposite of Carson Wentz, where Wentz came in and he came from a small school, but had all the tools, big body, good arm. It seemed like he was a hard worker, and it seemed like he kind of had the right mentality coming in, had a great, won the job right off the bat. They had Philly had just brought in Sam Bradford, just traded for Sam Bradford, thinking, hey, he's going to be a 1-year bridge, and Wentz won the job in, as a rookie coming out of North Dakota State of all places. You'd think that, hey, coming out of such a small school, he's going to need some trainings, give him the training wheels for a season and we'll sit and he can watch behind Sam Bradford. But that clearly wasn't the case, winning the job outright in the offseason. I think blew everybody away with that. And then his second year would have won MVP if he didn't get hurt in, I believe it was somewhere around week 11 or week 12. I mean, he was leading that MVP race. And of course, Nick Foles comes in, wins them a Super Bowl, and that was it for Wentz. I mean, they gave him one more season after that, and then the next offseason is when they drafted Jalen Hurts. And I mean, you could see Wentz's confidence just was completely shot at that point. Understandably so. I mean, drafting a somebody that was really a big time project coming out of Oklahoma. Well, Alabama then transferred to Oklahoma, but coming out of OU, nobody really thought of him as, this guy's going to go in the second round and he's going to be one of the better quarterbacks within a year or two of him getting some starting reps. And I mean, we've seen a jump in ability and in talent from him, especially with in the passing game every single year. I mean, I believe he started around week 10 or week 11, took over for Wentz his rookie season. His second year, they made the playoffs as a wild card team. It was Nick Sirianni's first season as a head coach. I think he tried to come in and show off this dynamic passing game. And about halfway through the season, they said, scrap it. And then they just said they tailored the offense to Jalen's strengths, which is being, a lot more run heavy, easy passes, swing the ball out to Devonta Smith easily, use the running backs, use your legs. And they really tailored the offense to him at about halfway through his second season, first full season as a starter. And they went on a really nice run at the end of the year to make a wild card spot. Yes, they did get smashed by Tampa that first round game, but it was amazing to see the progress that offense made when they tailored it to Jalen's strengths. Now we go into this season and Eagles start out red hot. I think they started something like 8-0 or 10-1 or something crazy like that.
That was solid.
He ends up getting that minor injury in week 14, I believe it was, against the Bears. sits out for the next week or two. Beers sits out the next week or two, or maybe up until week 17. And then he's just returns and is absolutely phenomenal and really went toe to toe with Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. So I think we've seen everything we need to see. A guy that's clearly dedicated, puts in the work to get himself better. And, that's one of the things that always comes out of Philly is there's never any character concerns. His teammates all love him. He's just a dedicated worker and always trying to improve. And you don't see that from every quarterback. I mean, look at like a Kyler Murray, for example. I mean, he came in right off the bat, incredible talent, and they make the playoffs, I believe, in his second year. And then they just feel like he kind of stopped putting in the work. And now you see where the Cardinals are at with him at the helm. They give him that big contract, and they have to try to convince him to study film. Like that seems like, a pretty basic one. I don't think you're going to have that issue with Jalen. Jalen's going to continue to work. And I think this is one of those guys that they paid the right guy here. He's got kind of this Mahomes type of work ethic where if he's ever doubted, he's going to go out and try to prove people wrong. And he's constantly trying to improve. I mean, if you remember back to last off season, when after the Chiefs traded away Tyreek Hill, there were a lot of people that were saying, hey, is this the downfall of the Chiefs now that they had to give Mahomes all this money? And clearly not. They just obviously just won the Super Bowl. But yeah, I mean, this is the right guy to sign. I think he deserves every penny of it. And I mean, yeah, you don't have a fully guaranteed contract like Deshaun Watson, but if Jalen Hurts is good for the next 4 or 5 years, he's going to get another extension and all that money is going to end up being paid. So maybe that's why he wasn't so worried about trying to get something that's 85% guaranteed. It was about 70% of his total contract ended up being guaranteed. He's probably thinking, I don't need this fully guaranteed because I'm going to get an extension 3 years later anyways, or 4 years later anyways. So I think it's a great signing and well-desered for him to get that payday.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is
Sorry
kind of
for being so long-winded, but
this is kind of one of those classic quarterback contracts that we've seen. You mentioned it's about 75% guaranteed, which that's kind of what we've been seeing outside of that Deshaun Watson deal. So, no, Philly obviously saw what they needed to see out of Jalen Hurts in his first couple of years in the league. Didn't want to take any chances coming up with negotiations and wanted to get this locked and loaded and move on to the next thing, focusing on the season at hand and not worrying about quarterback situation this upcoming off season or anything like that. Get this locked in for draft and everything like that. So not that Hurts was going anywhere, but it's good to have him at least locked up where you're not having to worry about franchise tag or anything like that coming up. But I guess this is one of the young quarterbacks that is locked up now, and two more are going to be on the horizon here soon with extensions, and that's Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert of the Bengals and Chargers respectively. And obviously it seems like every time a quarterback gets a new deal, it tops the previous one. So I would expect both of those guys to top that. Do you see similar deals to this? Do you see them quite a bit more? Obviously a different skill set with Joe Burrow. Justin Herbert is a little bit mobile, not as mobile as Jalen Hurts, but two young guys with big arms that obviously the future is bright in all three of these cities, Philly, LA, and
Cincy, buddy.
Cincy, yeah. We're on to Cincinnati. But no, I mean, what do you see from those two guys? I mean, I don't think anything's going to get done necessarily this off season, but maybe this summer, this fall, next off season.
I would think that it's going to be similar to these deals. Not saying that I think Burrow deserves more, but he knows I need Jamar Chase back. I really want T. Higgins back. We just signed Malcolm Brown to this Malcolm Brown again, Orlando Brown to this fourth string running back for the Rams. Like What's wrong? What's wrong? That's
That's
the second time.
When was the last time he played in the league?
Dude, I don't know. Could have been
I'm gonna look.
2019 for all we know. No, I mean, I think Burrow deserves more, but I think he's also one of those guys that understands I'm freaking good. Mahomes didn't take max money. He could have gotten a 10. He signed something around like an 8 or 10 year deal or something with the Chiefs, and it was relatively team friendly. I mean, it wasn't, right now he's slotted in as the 7th highest paid quarterback in the league. Mahomes behind Hurts, Rodgers, at least based on
annual
average salary. Jalen, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, Deshaun Watson, Josh Allen. At least 4 of those deals, 3 to 4 of those deals look like mistakes. I mean, so I hope Burrow goes in and maybe says, hey, give me 5-year, 250, or maybe, dude, go get the exact same contract as Jalen Hurts. I don't think that that's an outrageous amount of money, especially given that the cap does increase 10 to 20% each year. I think this past year it was somewhere around 20%. So that's another, that's a pretty good chunk of change that it usually increases. By the end of this Jalen Hurts deal, it's based on how quarterback contracts just keep increasing. It's not going to look like a super brutal cap hit. So if I'm Burrow, I probably aim for something exactly like this Jalen Hurts deal where you're not taking max money and you're not saying, hey, I need 55, I need 58 million a year. You take somewhere in the upper 40s or right at that $50 million a year mark and just be good with that. What's the difference for you at plus all the endorsement money that he's getting and stuff? I mean, let's say he's making another 10 million off the field. You can make that money up pretty quickly with that kind of stuff. So, and it's different with a quarterback than any other position because obviously the quarterbacks are the ones that get most of that off the field money from State Farm and the like. So I think that it'd be in his best interest and Burrow's best interest to take a little bit of a discounts or just try to not
break the bank,
force the Bengals to give max money. And that's the only thing you're going to take.
Yeah.
As far as Herbert goes, I just don't trust the Chargers enough. Like, I'd almost think if I'm Herbert, I do go after max money. Because if I don't take max money, are they going to surround me with the players that we
right.
need? We still miss the playoffs or barely make it and then blow a 28-point lead or whatever it was against the Jags. I don't know. I mean, I think both of them are smart enough, and Herbert especially. Like, he was a 4.0. I think he was a 4.0 student at Oregon with a biology major. Like, how do you do that and play football at that
right.
level? He's just a sharp dude, so I doubt he takes max money as well. But they're certainly both deserving of that Jalen Hurts contract.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like you said, I think both, and the quarterbacks in the league nowadays, obviously you're going to be the top paid player on your team for the most part, at least the good ones. And you got to look at the Tom
even
Brady
Daniel
route.
Jones is by like 4 times the next highest player.
Right. But you got to go the Tom Brady route and look at, if you want to win championships, take a nice deal, but don't break the bank, because you do, and you'll see what happened in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers. You can't keep a lot of the guys that you want to, and you better hit in the draft. I mean, that's your only chance of being Super Bowl bound. So I agree with that. And both those guys are going to get paid at whatever time their organizations want to give them money. Don't foresee either of them going anywhere anytime soon. So,
yeah, the other thing to consider here, I believe all 3 of those quarterbacks were in the same draft.
Yeah.
3 years back. So Jalen was on his final year of his contract. The Bengals and the Chargers do have that 5th-year option, given that Burrow and Herbert were first-round picks. So they're in less of a rush, I think, to get a deal done. But I think you're probably better off just get it done with this offseason and because somebody else is going to sign next off season for even bigger money. That's just how it's probably going to go. So I say just get the deal done if I'm either of those squads. You know that you want those guys around for the next 8+ years. I say just get the deal done now.
Yep. Those are 3 guys playing on their rookie contracts. And we're going to talk about guys that are going to be getting rookie contracts here a week from today. So this episode we're recording on Wednesday, coming out on Thursday. We are a week away from the draft. Got you covered with the quarterback position today. So similar to what we did with the running back, wide receiver positions last week, we're going to run through the top 5 quarterbacks or so, give you a sleeper pick or 2 at the end as well, and just kind of run through some of the statistics on these guys, what our thoughts are, and just kind of go from there with it. So we'll kick it off with odds on favorite, I think, right now to go number 1, and that is Bryce Young, Alabama quarterback. And height is the big concern, I guess, from some experts in this one. He's 5'10", 204 pounds. Heisman and Maxwell winner in that 2021 season for Alabama. Last year's stats, 24.5% completion percentage, 3,300 yards, 32 touchdowns, 5 picks, and another 4 touchdowns on the ground. Was out for a couple games in the middle of the season due to injury, so could have had a little bit better stats there as well. Missed a couple of, I think, one cupcake game and another game that maybe been a little bit tougher, but regardless, he is, I believe, probably
one of them was the Arkansas game, and their backup quarterback just ran all over Arkansas. It was crazy.
Yep. So no, this is probably the best quarterback in this draft as far as safe, I would say. I think Bryce Young's going to be fine. I worry a little bit about him if Carolina is the destination. Just there's not a ton there for him. It's going to take him some time to probably develop because he's not going to have anybody to throw the ball to necessarily. So that's a little concerning for me. But long-term wise, Carolina, they traded up to that first pick. They're looking for their franchise guy, and I think this is the safest one for him. NFL.com comp has him as a Drew Brees. So obviously easy to go with height, but similar style with that. He's got a good arm, is mobile when he needs to be, but not the craziest of running quarterbacks, similar to Drew Brees. So I was fine with that comp, and I mean, that's a very high ceiling for him to hit, but only time will tell with that.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things you mentioned was that weight being listed at 204. That was his combine weight, but rumor is he's closer to like a 185, 190, and he was just pounding milkshakes and like creatine and protein shakes like all like the entire time leading up to the draft. And just people said he just like looked bloated at the draft because he was just just pounding like these, all these supplements and all this creatine and whatnot. So I think it sounds like he plays closer to like 185, 190, but that 5'10" can be, I think, I mean, I'm not worried about necessarily him, I mean, the thought used to be, hey, these short quarterbacks, can they see over the offensive line? These massive 6'6", 6'7", 6'4" height types of guys. And I mean, the dude played at Alabama. They have like the biggest offensive lines, or top 5 biggest offensive lines in the country at all, pretty much since Saban got there. So I'm less concerned about that. The only concern I have about the size is the longevity. I mean, if he's going to be taking hits like Tua was, that's the only concern for me. But he's certainly more elusive than Tua. Kyler's sometimes gets thrown around a little bit, but his ACL injury it was a non-contact injury. Other smaller quarterbacks, I mean, Russell Wilson, he's never been hurt outside of breaking his thumb, which, on a helmet. So I guess I'm not super concerned about his height and his size, as long as he is able to avoid some big hits. And like I said, obviously more mobile than Tua. So I'm less concerned about that. I think that this is the no-brainer number 1 overall pick. yeah, there's limitations with his weapons, but I still think he's going to be able to step in day one and make it work. When we really look back at this last season at Alabama, his receiving core was not anything special. It wasn't like the receiving core that Tua had with what was it? Jamison Williams, Waddle, Jerry Jeudy maybe was in there at one point. Like, and who's the Jamison Williams he transferred there out from Ohio State. Like, that's insane. That's just how stacked that was for Tua. There wasn't anything even close to that in terms of his receivers at Alabama this past year. John Mechie was maybe his best receiver 2 years ago, but I don't know. He had an ACL issue too. So, I mean, I think number 1 overall pick. He went into college with a 100 out of 100 rating from 24/7 Sports. That's obviously as good as you can get. So, coming into college, number 1 overall prospect, going through college, won a Heisman, I think deserves to be the first overall pick. He's, not the prodigy, the typical, like the prodigy type, like a Trevor Lawrence, but the guy's a baller. I think he's worth that number 1 overall pick. And I thought that's who it should have been this whole time, especially with Carolina being there at 1. My comp is Russell Wilson. I think they play pretty similar. The other, that's the upside. I think the downside could be like a Doug Flutie, where the size did matter and he ended up having to play in the CFL. But we're in a different NFL now where QBs have all the protection in the world from getting hit. You land on a guy too hard, you get flagged. I'm less worried about the injuries now and the size now than you would have been back in the Doug Flutie days. It's Carolina for me. That's the ultimate fit. And if for some reason they took a different quarterback, then he's obviously going number 2 to Houston.
Somebody with a little bit more of a prototypical NFL quarterback size is CJ Stroud, the presumptive number 2 quarterback off the board. Why don't you tell us a little bit about him, Joe?
Yeah, I think there was some question marks with Stroud about his athleticism. Obviously, we all know extremely accurate, can throw the ball intermediate, short, and deep with accuracy. There was some question marks, though, about his athleticism. And I think that he answered those questions in the Georgia game, in that college football playoff game, where I think he ran for somewhere around 70 yards, was getting constant first downs, busting away from the rush and running for first downs and throwing on the run, where he didn't really have to do that much in Big Ten play throughout his career because their offensive line was so much more dominant and you're not facing a Georgia defensive front 7. But I think he answered those concerns a little bit with that. But I think the downside is, at least throughout most of his career up until that game, was we didn't really know, is he a project or a product of that Ohio State offense where you've got, look at this wide receiver deck that he played with: Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Marvin Harrison Jr., who could be the number 2, number 3 overall pick next year. Emeka Egbuka, he was awesome this year. Julian Fleming, he didn't have a great career at Ohio State, but he came in as a 5-star prospect. Wherever he goes, he's probably not going to have, especially if he goes number 2 to Houston, they might not have a single receiver that's as good as any of those 6 that I just named off. So I think there's a little bit of concern there, just because he had, and in that Ryan Day Ohio State offense, he had it tailor-made for success, but ultimately extremely accurate, good enough athletically, ideal size being 6'3", 214. That's about as good as it gets at the quarterback position. I just think that there's question marks. Can he do it with a lesser receiving core around him, lesser talent on the offensive line than he had at Ohio State, and less of a scheme where in the Big Ten, They were one of the two, maybe three teams that run the spread offense, where the rest of where these Big Ten defenses, these secondaries in the Big Ten just can't compete, and with the speed that Ohio State has. So a little bit of concern there, but accurate. I think probably one of the safer picks in this draft, but we also thought Dwayne Haskins was safe, and you saw how that ended up. So question marks, I guess, but ultimately probably, I mean, is he your number 2 quarterback here?
Yeah, I think so for sure. I think there's a little bit of a drop off after this. I mean, for as much of a sure thing as there is in the draft, I just think after this, I mean, we're going to talk about some of those guys, but CJ Stroud projects as a pretty solid NFL quarterback. I think, again, like you said, he goes to Houston. It's going to be a little bit tough. They do have the 12 pick in the draft, so maybe you could get his teammate Jackson Smith-Njigba in there at 12 and maybe at least have somebody with rapport that might help speed up his timeline at least a little bit with that. But no, the thing that blew my mind, like you had touched on, I'm so glad you brought up that Georgia game, because before then, didn't really know. We didn't really see a ton from him. He's playing against the Rutgers, Marylands of the Big Ten East, and you didn't know what was going to happen against that Georgia team. But that Georgia team, I mean, man, that defense was ferocious. And I mean, outside of just one of the worst shank kicks I've ever seen in my entire life, Ohio State could have easily made that national championship game. CJ Stroud led them back down the field to get into contention for that kick and had just an unbelievable game. Yes, like you said, I mean, he has just an absolute elite crop of wide receivers and also has the stigma of Ohio State quarterbacks being kind of system quarterbacks and not doing a whole lot in the NFL once they come out. So he does have that, a little bit of that uphill battle, but I liked his accuracy too. I mean, 66% last year, threw for 3,600 yards, 41 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. So that's pretty solid there as far as he doesn't really turn the ball over a ton. But again, Ohio State's usually up in games, so he's not having to force throws, play from behind. And comp that NFL.com had for him is Jared Goff, which Jared Goff is a guy obviously that went 1 overall in his draft, but isn't somebody that if you knew what you would have gotten out of Jared Goff, is he worth a number 2 overall pick, I guess?
He was number 1 or what
I'm saying now
in this draft. Yeah,
correct. Like if you knew now what you did about Jared Goff, is he worth a number 2 overall pick?
I mean, he did make a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But probably not. I think there could be such a wide range of possibilities here with him. I think Dwayne Haskins is the low end, where Haskins came from the same scheme, extremely talented wide receivers against similar defenses and everything. But there's the obvious high side of, I think, a Justin Herbert type, where throws a really nice ball, athletic enough. The other thing too, we saw this with Herbert, where there were question marks about whether Herbert was just, a product of that Oregon system. But then in the Rose Bowl against the Badgers, he was running all over the place and really was able to show off that athleticism. So I think that's the upside is Herbert. I think the floor is Dwayne Haskins. That's a pretty damn low floor. I hope he can at least attain that. Jared Goff, I guess, would be smack dab in the middle, where, a top, maybe, what is he? 12 in the league. I mean, something around there based on how he played it with Detroit this past season. So yeah, I mean, that's probably fair. There's just a ton of I think that it could go either way though, he could just be a product of the Ohio State system or maybe peak as a Justin Herbert. Moving on to,
oh yeah, go ahead.
Good.
Yep.
Okay. Moving on to I guess we'll call them the project quarterbacks here. 2 guys that have very high upside, with these next 2 previews, but I'm going to start it off with Anthony Richardson out of Florida, 6'4", 244, ran a 4.43 40 at the combine. That is in the 99th percentile of all quarterbacks that have run the 40 in NFL history. So one of the most athletic, one of the fastest quarterbacks to ever come out of college ball. I mean, the size is elite. Again, 6'4", 240. Speed, obviously elite. He's got a cannon of an arm. Just truly athletic specimen. I read that he has 10% body fat. That's something I will never achieve. So good for him there. And he can throw the ball 75 yards. He can squat 500 pounds. Athletic freak, built like a linebacker, speed of a wide receiver, but he has 14 starts at Florida. He's had some games that were spectacular. Game 1 of this past season against Utah, when Florida pulled off that upset against the Utes, he was spectacular. He was amazing. And I believe it might have been Mel Kiper said this guy after watching that game and understanding that Kiper loves his traits. I mean, Josh Allen was absolutely in love with Josh Allen, size and traits. He said this guy has a chance to be the number 1 overall pick. After that game, the Florida coaching staff came out and said, we can't, if we want him to sustain his health, we can't run him like this. And his production really fell off after that game, after they made that change. So what do you think? I mean, he's obviously pretty raw, but he's got mad athletic traits and size and everything.
Yeah, I mean, he was off the charts at the combine with everything. Literally everything he did was just ridiculous, and everyone was in awe of it. But like you said, just inconsistent play at Florida. Could never really get a ton going. Like you said, that first game, he was unbelievable on the ground against Utah. And Utah's defense is pretty stout. I mean, we saw what they did against Caleb Williams
twice.
Yeah, exactly. So it just, yes, I understand that, but that's part of his aura, is that he is a good running quarterback. He's got elite speed. So you have to kind of go and use that too, because he's not that great of a passer. He's just over 50% completion percentage last season.
I believe he had a couple games where he was in the 30% range.
Not great, Bob. 17 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Another 9 touchdowns on the ground. So again, you can see 650 yards. He's a very good running quarterback. And honestly, he probably has the most potential of any of these guys, but he's just so raw right now that he's going to have to get into a good system with someone he can learn behind, not get forced onto the field, because if he is, this is going to be an ugly situation and probably somebody that doesn't pan out. So teams are taking an absolute huge risk with him, huge reward, huge risk. So got to risk it to get the biscuit, as they say. So I don't know. We'll see. I mean, right now he's projected anywhere from some mocks you look at have him going number 1 overall, all the way down to a team trading up for him at 5. Otherwise the Colts at 4 make sense too. So I don't know. He's one of these that, again, it's a project. I like him over the next guy that we're going to talk about. I'd rather take my chances on him. As far as fantasy too, this is probably the guy I would take a shot on in case of that rushing ability. So for those of you that are in rookie dynasty drafts, I mean, yes, Bryce Young is going to be safe, but if you want somebody that has a lot of possible potential, especially for that rushing ability, Anthony Richardson's your guy. NFL.com has him comp for a Cam Newton, which I think that's probably okay. I mean, he's got very similar traits as far as not the best passer and elite runner. So that's kind of what Cam was. But I'm so torn on Anthony Richardson. I don't know. And it's going to be incredible to watch the draft in a week because of what he did at that combine, just to see what teams think of this.
I think that I think there's 2 great fits, Seattle and Detroit, where they've got, Seattle, Geno, Detroit, Jared Goff. You've got ceilings with those guys. You're not going to be winning a Super Bowl with, Geno Smith, is he going to take you to the promised land? I'll believe it when I see it. Oh, I'll believe it when I see it. Jared Goff did, like I said, Jared Goff did make he made that Super Bowl a few years back, but Is he going to do that in Detroit? Do you trust Detroit? And do you trust, is Dan Campbell on the Sean McVay level? I don't think so. So, I mean, I think he should go if he falls to 5 and you're Seattle. I think you jump all over that. You let Geno start the next year or two, and then plan to bring in Anthony Richardson year 2, year 3. If he falls to 6 for Detroit, yeah, Detroit could go, grab one of the high-end edge rushers or Christian Gonzalez, the high-end corner out of
Oregon,
and return specialist out of Oregon. But I think Seattle's the ideal spot for him. I've got a couple comps for him. I mean, he could be as high as Josh Allen or maybe a Cam Newton type. Could be as poor, though, as like Vince Young, where Vince Young, great first year, won Rookie of the Year, but never turned into anything after that. I think there was also like, the shine on Vince Young coming out of Texas. And there was just that Rose Bowl game, the game before. And I think all the writers whoever votes on that, all those NFL writers were pumped, like, oh, special guy, all the hype. And so but obviously nothing after that, really. I think the ultimate comp, though, Dante Culpepper, when he was with,
nice.
I mean, had a couple great years with the Vikings, and then got that payday with the Dolphins and never did squat with them. So I think there's a massive another guy. I mean, I think there's a broader range with Richardson than there is Stroud. I mean, we thought Malik Willis there were mocks that had Malik Willis going at number 2 overall to the Lions last year. He ended up falling to the 3rd round. And now Tennessee's reports are that they're kind of out on him already. So there's a risk. There's a massive risk when you're just taking an athletic freak like this, like Malik Willis was coming out of Liberty last year. But I think that the high side is probably a Josh Allen. The low side is probably Vince Young. Dante Culpepper, pretty good couple of years, but never sustained it. That's probably more of my, where I'm going to put him in, which is pretty. I mean, Culpepper had a really nice few years with Randy Moss. Yeah. I mean, that Vikings team was freaking sick. So I'm good with that. The other project quarterback that we had mentioned out of Kentucky, Mr. Will Levis, the Mayo drinking,
Mayo and the coffee banana, sipping, banana peel eating quarterback.
Fucking weirdo. 6'4", 229 out of Kentucky. I'm not super high on him. From watching from watching some highlights from his pro day, all I saw were fastball. Like, I didn't see him throw any balls with touch. And yeah, it's great to have that nice arm strength, but cool. Cool. You can throw the ball hard, but what ultimately matters is what kind of touch can you combine with that arm strength? And he doesn't seem to really throw balls with much touch. I mean, Tom Brady never had the best arm in the world. Mahomes has a top 3 arm in the NFL, but he also throws with touch. He could, if he wanted to, he could just throw fastball, but he has the ability to throw with touch. I haven't seen any of that out of Will Levis, and that's a concern of mine.
Yeah, Will Levis, I am completely out on him, and I think whatever team takes him, it's going to be a giant mistake. I mean, this is a guy that started his career off at Penn State, couldn't beat out Sean Clifford for the starting spot, ended up transferring to Kentucky, had a pretty solid year 2 years ago with Kentucky, decided to come back for whatever reason last year in that weak draft class, and kind of ruined it. I mean, I guess it didn't ruin his stock because we're talking about him here being a top 5 pick in the draft, but I mean, just absolutely awful numbers last year. I mean, 2,400 yards, 19 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and he's not that great mobile. He lost a lot of his playmakers, so didn't have a lot of the guys that he normally had. Went through a little bit of injury this last season too, but just somebody that I never really got the hype with him. I just watching him, he doesn't impress me a ton. And I love this NFL.com comp. Smoking Jay Cutler.
Wow. Hey, that's pretty good.
It's a great comp.
That's
and I think
spot
that's
on.
exactly what he's going to end up doing, is that he's going to show some flashes maybe at times for you. But most of the time, he's just going to be kind of just average. I mean, that's all it's going to be. And I think for where you're going to, yes, if he was a second or third round quarterback, perfect. That's fine. I'd be totally cool drafting him there. But a team using a top 5, top 10 pick in the draft for Will Levis, I don't see it. And I think that franchise is going to be in trouble for the next few years.
If he were to fall a little bit, well, I guess pretty far considering where some of these mocks have him now, because I agree with you. I think it'd be if you're like Vegas at 7, which
still don't.
This is one of those players that Mark Davis would fall in love with. We talked about this in the previous episode.
Yeah.
Like, he fell in love with Darius Hayward-Bay. That was awful because of the speed, because of the traits. This is another guy, cannon of an arm, quick motion. His passing, it's aesthetically pleasing mechanically and everything, but poor decision maker. Obviously they took Jamarcus Russell because he had a really sweet arm. Although Jamarcus ended up weighing a cool, probably high 200s by the time that he was released, where Will Levis is like a bodybuilder. So I guess you probably don't have to worry about him putting on too much weight, but not that you want a bodybuilder as a quarterback anyways. No. That's kind of a red flag right there. Like, be focused on in the film room, not the weight room. But Jay Cutler, I think that's spot on. I think Vegas, if they want to take a shot, let Jimmy G be the quarterback for this one season and then move on to Will Levis the following. Okay. I mean, I don't know. That seems too high for me to go there at 7. But if he does fall another 15 or so spots, Minnesota's there at 23. I feel like they're kind of done with Kirk Cousins. Give Cousins one final run, and then you turn it over to Will Levis in 2024. I mean, what do you think about that? Or is that still too high for you?
As a Bears fan, I'd love that, because that's probably 2 wins that we're going to have against Minnesota. I don't see Will Levis, and I'll eat my words if we're sitting here 3-4 years from now and he's a top 5 quarterback, top 10 quarterback in the NFL. I just see him being middle of the road, and I don't know. I don't see a ton of NFL potential with him, and I don't know what a lot of these scouts are seeing. This is just somebody, again, that just hasn't done it on a college stage, really. He hasn't won any huge games or anything. So what makes that seem like it's going to transition to the NFL? I don't know. That's where I sit. The last quarterback that might possibly sneak into the first round here before we each give a sleeper pick is Hendon Hooker. Hendon Hooker, Tennessee Volunteers quarterback, was off to an absolutely phenomenal start. Almost a 70% completion percentage, 3,100 yards, 27 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, another 5 rushing touchdowns before he tore that ACL at Williams-Brice Stadium in South Carolina in that first loss of the season for Tennessee. But this guy's 6'3", 217, 25 years old, coming off of an ACL tear. So obviously huge risks there. Could potentially sneak into that first round. Is that kind of where you see him going, Gel? I mean, or is this somebody that you'd rather see somebody grab in the second round?
I think it depends who you are. If you've got a late pick, I'm looking at, it'd be weird to see him go as high as 11 to Tennessee and stay in state. But if they're ready to move off Tannehill, Hooker tore that ACL in November. He's not going to be ready for the start of the season. So you could, if they're done with Malik Willis, you could in theory basically redshirt Hooker and start Tannehill for this year and then move off of him. The downside is that means he's starting his NFL career then at age 26. And yeah, if you can get 8 to 10 good years out of a quarterback, that's worth a first round pick
for sure.
But given that age, 25 years old. Why did it take till he was 25 to pop? I mean, if he's already met his ceiling, which is totally possible, or really close to his ceiling, that's not worth, this high of a pick. Yeah, he had a great year. He throws a nice ball. He's, good touch, great deep ball. Obviously, Jalen Hyatt helped with that. Or was it? Yeah, Jalen Hyatt helped with that. He can throw on the move. He's mobile, like you said, 5 rushing touchdowns. But I just question, did he already hit his ceiling? And that's obviously the big downside here.
Yeah. NFL.com comp for him is Desmond Ridder, which Desmond Ridder hasn't.
You don't know anything about Desmond Ridder yet. How can you make this comp?
That's what I thought was hilarious with that. So, but again, but that's kind of very similar where, Atlanta's still trying to figure out what they have in Desmond Ridder, and teams are going to try and figure out what they have in Hendon Hooker for a little bit too. So I don't think he's worth that first round, even if you're in that late first. I think if you can get him on day 2, then I'd be more comfortable with that and just see. But like you said, the 25, what took him so long? Yes, he started off at Virginia Tech, had to transfer over to Tennessee, starting behind Joe Milton for a little bit there. So it's like, come on. I don't know. What's with Tennessee with all these like old players too? Velus Jones Jr. comes out last year. It's like 25 as a wide receiver. Got Hendon Hooker this year. Cedric Tillman's a little bit older
Tillman's
for a wide
like 24,
receiver.
I think.
Yeah. So it's like, geez, what's going on?
I don't know how much I agree with the Desmond Ridder comp just because we haven't seen him at all. But so my comp was Sam Bradford. Also coming off, he had 2 ACL issues in Oklahoma and just was kind of a middle of the road quarterback the whole time. Kept getting traded for first round picks somehow. I think he was traded 3 times and each time for a first or something. It was crazy, but I think that's ultimately going to be my comp. Ridder, it's too hard to tell. That's weird.
For sure. We've got a little bit of time here, Jill. Do you have quite a bit of golf to cover here too? What's one sleeper? What's one guy that you're looking for in a little bit later rounds?
I am loving Jaron Hall out of BYU.
Nice. I got him down. Yep. That was one of my 2.
Jaron Hall, BYU, 6 foot, 207. Not the biggest dude out there, but extremely athletic, runs a 6'4" or a 4.6 40. That's a big difference. 6'4" 40 versus a 4.6. He can make most of the throws. He's great on the move. Right now he's still a bit of a project, but that's what you're going to get in these later rounds. Right away, he's best off just, if you were to throw him in like the bootleg, and so he's got easy throws. I think that's what a lot of BYU did. And I think that's he can definitely be at some point, a potential starting quarterback, especially if you can get him in one of the later rounds in absolute value. He was really the only reason to watch BYU football this year. And he's wasn't the most polished, but again, coming out of BYU, what are you going to get? What are you expecting? My comp for him, I'm going to say as high as Jalen Hurts if he continues to improve. Kind of had a similar game to Jalen Hurts that Jalen had in college. Not as big as Jalen's, not the biggest dude, but he's built like a freaking freight train. Hall would have to put on a little bit of size to be able to play the style that Jalen Hurts does, but I think that may be the upside, maybe not quite there, just because that's extremely high. But I think that my best comp for him is Jordan Love, another player out of Utah, Jordan Love out of Utah State, and where he's got a lot of traits. He's got a quick, whip of an arm, but we don't really know his ceiling. We don't know his floor. He's a bit of an unknown. If he was a couple inches taller, I think he may be a late first, early second, but given that he's 6 feet tall, it's puts him at a little bit of a disadvantage. But I think if you can get him in the 3rd or the 4th, this guy's got a chance to start for you someday.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think, yeah, absolutely. Somebody that's obviously not going to be starting day 1 on a team, but somebody that maybe the guy in front of him goes down and you can see what you end up having out of him. So yeah, the NFL.com comp was Minshew Mania. That's where they had him comped with.
Okay, Minshew had a couple of years, a couple of years in Jacksonville.
Yep. So that was one of the two that I was going to bring up. The other guy I wanted to bring up, Joe, talked about him quite a bit during the college season because he was down to rake, and that is Dorian Thompson-Robinson. So out of UCLA, 6'2", 203, had a 70% completion percentage this last season, 3,100 yards, 27 touchdowns through the air, another 12 on the ground. So I like his potential. Again, not somebody that's going to be starting day one, but might be somebody that ends up developing into something if he can get into the right system. I thought a really good comp for him actually is Tyrod, don't call me Tyrod Taylor. And I think that's pretty spot on. Tyrod Taylor is somebody that had a lot of potential. He's solid. He just couldn't stay healthy. I mean, the guy is just an absolute injury freak for whatever reason.
How do you get stabbed in the ribs, in the lung by your own doctor? Like, God damn, that's just the worst luck.
But somebody that I think could develop into that. I mean, we saw Tyrod have some pretty quality time in everywhere he's been. Again, it's just been like freak injuries and stuff, but could be
Buffalo,
that's
Houston,
kind of
San Diego, or I guess guy. LA at the time. Like he was never horrible.
Yeah. So
I like that. That's pretty good. Yeah.
All right, Joe, can I get a golf swing? We are on to the RBC Heritage. Going to recap that where Matthew Fitzpatrick ends up taking down Jordan Spieth in triple overtime, aka on the third hole. Jordan Spieth had multiple opportunities to close this thing out, but Matthew Fitzpatrick
two putts that had to have missed by a total of a half an inch.
Yes.
That would have either of those would have won it. Probably an eighth of an inch and a quarter inch. Like poor guy. That would have been him defending his title.
Yep. Fitzy on 18 for the third time of the day ends up just hitting an absolute dime that rolls out to within tap-in range. So put a lot of pressure on Jordan Spieth on that last one, his last hole, I guess, and ended up hitting it just a little bit long and to the right and had quite a bit of a chip, and there he put it. I can't remember, but either way, I think it was a chip. But
he was like on the edge of the green. He ended up putting it about. He ended up going
long.
He went
like
long,
4 feet long or so.
Couple, and I was saying, my parents were in town. I was saying to them, like, can't leave it short. If you don't give yourself a chance, you lose. And then he ends up freaking smoking it. Yep. So, but you have to.
Yeah. This tournament, it's a fun course, and it was. I know we were talking a lot about it being designated and right after the Masters, but I'm really happy that they did. It was so cool seeing so many of the big golfers playing in this tournament, where in the years past, with it being right after the Masters, you'd have a handful of them, but not all of the top guys in golf. So it was really cool seeing that. The leaderboard was just unbelievable on Sunday. I mean, there's a ton of guys that were right in contention, and it was really awesome to see. But yeah, I thought it was an overall solid tournament.
Fun tourney. Matthew Fitzpatrick, good to see him back on top of the leaderboard. I think his last win would have been the Open last year.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So good to see him back at the top, and Spieth put on a great show. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned that it was a designated event, and we had talked about this in our preview briefly, that Rory had decided not to play. So this is his second designated event that he didn't attend. You are only allowed to attend one per season, or only allowed to skip one per season. So he skipped the Century Tournament of Champions, first major event of the PGA year. I thought that was weird that you would skip that one, especially given that these designated events, a lot of it has been, Rory and Tiger were the leaders on creating these designated events throughout the PGA Tour. He's the first one to skip. He's the only player to skip two, and he skipped the first designated event of the year. I know that he was fined $3 million from his potential PIP bonus winnings that he could get at the end of the year. I guess I'm assuming that other $3 million will be designated out or, given out to other players. What do you think these players, his competitors, are thinking at this point? Are they like, God damn, Rory, you made so much money. You think you're too good for these events now? Or do you think that they're like, hey, we understand you missed the cut. You had a real shitty week at the Masters. Like, how do you think these other players are are reacting to Rory skipping this.
Yeah, I don't think the players are really too concerned about it, to be honest. I don't really see it as that big of a deal. The only one that I feel bad for is maybe like the fans that were hoping to see him being a designated event and everything. But as a player, you're just focused on doing what you can and winning and all of that. So I don't necessarily know if it was that big of a deal to me. It's just weird that we haven't really heard anything, but I think that's also pretty typical of golfers too. He'll be asked about it the next time he shows up at a tournament. He'll be asked why he skipped that, I'm sure, but yeah, I'm not too concerned about it.
Yeah.
Speaking of top of the leaderboard, Jell, yours truly for the first time since the 2022 Honda Classic is atop our pick.
That's a long time, dude.
That is a long time. That is over a calendar year. I now have a 5-stroke lead thanks to Patrick Cantlay's unbelievable run and Mr. Shane Lowry's absolute not run.
Yeah, I'm thinking now that was Shane Lowry was a pretty stupid pick, given that yes, he had a ton of success in the past, but that was also when he wasn't playing against the top guys in the world. I mean, a lot of those top guys would skip because it's right after the Masters. I don't know what I was thinking with that. Designated event, you got to go with one of the top guys. Pissed.
Shout out to Patrick Cantlay as well, who had a ace during his early rounds before the
check
cut,
out that ace.
On to Louisiana this week for the Zurich Classic taking place at TPC Louisiana, just outside of New Orleans. Defending champs in this one, Xander Schauffele, Patrick Cantlay. TPC Louisiana is par 72, 7,400 yards. Different format this week. It is partners. So we have 4-ball, aka play your own ball, take the better of the two scores on Thursday, Saturday. And then we have foursomes on Friday and Sunday, which is actually alternate shot. So I don't know why they just don't call it alternate shot, but it's golf. So that's what we are rolling with. Some of the notable tandems this week, Matt and his younger brother, Alex, taking his first PGA Tour start. So you got the Fitzpatricks, Kurt Kitayama, Taylor Montgomery, Kyle Morikawa, Max Homa, Sam Burns, Billy Horschel, and of course Xander and Patrick Cantlay. Imagine a couple of those groups are in the favorites for the betting odds this week, again with the Masters and designated RBC Heritage last week. A little bit of a not great field this week, but still some fun pairings.
I mean, there's still some nice pairings up there. Obviously, Cantlay and Schauffele coming back to defend their title. Your top 5 run down like this: Cantlay, Schauffele, Colin Morikawa, Max Homa. So 2 of the top 10 players in the world, the way they're playing right now. Sung J M, Keith Mitchell, Tom Kim, Siwoo Kim. So is that right? That's
yeah. The Kims,
so, a couple Kims out there. And then your top 5 rounds out with Billy Horschel and Sam Burns at plus 1,400. Cantlay and Schauffele are your massive favorites. You never see this type of number in golf at plus 275. So you bet $100 on these guys, you win 275. Even John Rahm, when he was as hot as he was, he never eclipsed like plus 750. So insanely heavy favorites, but understandable when you're pairing 2 of the best golfers in the world.
And defending champs that know what they're doing on this course. So, yeah. Time for our pick 'em. If you're new to the segment, welcome in. Each week, Jill and I pick a golfer. Once you pick them, cannot pick them again. Can't pick the same one as your opponent for the week. And started off with the Century Tournament of Champions. Keep that running total. Cut does not matter. And again, for the first time in 14 months, Jell with the first pick in the draft.
I don't like
it. No, I take that back because you did have the first pick in the Century Tournament of Champions to kick it off this year due to a coin flip. But due to your losing, you do have the first pick this year.
That was a brutal loss. That was a 16-stroke shift or something?
Yeah. Yep. Cantlay was at minus 15, I believe. And
Shane was at +1 over. God, douchebag.
Yeah, buddy.
I'm going to go. So also something here, we're picking 2 golfers here. So we can't have used either of these 2 golfers earlier. We can't use them later in the season. So little bit of strategery here on this one. I have Patrick Cantlay and Xander Schauffele available to me, but I don't want to burn two guys that high end in one event, especially given that a lot of this is best, or two of the rounds are best ball and an alternate shot. The other two are alternate shot. Like, I think you're just going to see low scores from everybody. So I'm not going to burn two of those top guys, even though I could. So I'm going to go with the number 5 betting favorite, Billy Horschel and Sam Burns, as two guys. Yes, sir. Got it. Got him. First time I can burn you in 14 months, and I do. No pun intended with Sam Burns.
The 2 picks you've had, because you also burned me with
Colin Morikawa week 1.
Morikawa too,
Horschel and Burns finished in second place last year, 2021 with a T4. Horschel has not been playing well. He's only made 4 of his last 9 cuts, so he's not playing well. But Sam Burns he's just been dialed over the last few weeks. And obviously they play this course really well. So I'm going to go Billy Horschel, Sam Burns, and hoping for another second place finish for them.
I like it. Yeah, that was my pick. I've already used Xander and Patrick. And again, I get your strategy that it's tough to burn 2 guys this week, especially on a tournament that you think quite a few guys are going to shoot low. So I'm going to use the cheat code here. And I'm going to take the Fitzpatricks because I'm never going to use Alex. So I'm only going to burn one of them this week. So I'll burn Matt Fitzpatrick. Odds of him winning again this week are not great coming off of that RBC, but I'll roll with them, just with, again, taking a little bit of strategic action here. I was tempted to go with Morikawa and Homa, but they've both been just playing like dog shit lately. And
Homa started off really strong, and it looked like, hey, he's guy's primed to win a major this year. And
just terrible.
Last few weeks, brutal.
Yeah. So I don't know that this is the right time to use them, but maybe since they both haven't been that great, this would have been the right time. We'll find out next week, and hopefully I made the right decision here. But again, just going to burn that one golfer this week and take Matt Fitzpatrick off the board here. So we'll hope that the brothers have some magic in their golf game this week.
Good luck. I need some strokes back.
Well, that'll wrap up this episode. We'll be back with you tomorrow, going to preview the tight ends and any other positions that we want to, that we haven't really touched on. For the draft preview, going to talk a little MLB and talk about some of the rumors we're hearing for the draft and some other NFL trades. Can be found at Dead Arm Sports, Twitter, Instagram. Check us out on Facebook at Dead Arm Sports. Go to YouTube, Dead Arm Sports, into the search bar. Subscribe, click the bell there. That way you know when our live episodes drop. We monitor that chat. You can ask us any questions there. Otherwise, if you do miss out on asking us questions, you can hit us up on our socials at Dead Arm Sports, at DosGel, at DosJPEG. Make sure you ask us any questions. We're more than happy to answer them, or else we will answer them on the next podcast. If we think it's a good question that needs more discussion, we're more than happy to do that. Follow us on your favorite listening platform. Send us a screenshot of your written review. We will swag you up. What are some of those platforms, Joe?
You can hit us up on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Google Pods. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review to whatever your chosen listening platform is, or subscribe, rate, and review to all 4 listening platforms, and continue bumping us up the rankings a little bit. We're also available on YouTube. Just search Dead Arm Sports. Find our page. Should be the first thing at the top of your search results, and hit subscribe there. Hit that bell. Ding! So that you get the alerts when we go live, whenever we put on any new content.
Again, appreciate everyone out there listening. Hope you enjoyed the episode. If you do, tell someone you know about the show. It helps us spread the word, gets us up the rankings. Make sure, again, you subscribe. Give us a rating, review, whatever you can do to help us out. That would be greatly appreciated. We'll be back with you Es Viernes on Friday. Joe, close her out.
Perfect. Es Viernes. I heard very famous Family Guy quote, and it's it's perfect in this scenario. Any of these teams that are debating between CJ Stroud or Anthony Richardson, in this example, Anthony Richardson is the mystery box, CJ Stroud is the boat. And Peter says, a boat is a boat, but the mystery box could be anything. It could even be a boat.